welcome to another episode of Thinking Outside the Box with me, Tim Box.
And me, Britt Box.
We talk about all things mental health, emotional well-being, and how to navigate your own mind in these strange times. Now, we're not doctors, so don't confuse our advice as medical advice, and we do come at these subjects with a certain light-hearted approach, but please do not think we're trivialising them. We do take these things seriously, but we like to come at them from a slightly different perspective, hence thinking outside the box. Okay, so we're on to episode 6.
Wow.
Who'd have thought it when we had that idea that we'd actually get to an episode 6?
That I'd still be doing this.
I know, I'm quite proud of you for maintaining your attention span long enough to keep doing it.
Thank you.
You've done well, actually. Okay, so you're looking lovely today. Can I just say before we start?
Thank you very much.
Thought I'd throw that in
Rocking my vintage 90s Disneyland Paris jumper.
Looking amazing. Yeah,
Okay.
It is vintage 90s, isn't it?
It
But
is.
it's got one of those scary Mickey Mouse
Yeah.
characters on the
I
front.
like the scary Mickey. He's fun.
I find it bizarre that in the 90s we thought that was cute.
Have you seen the characters, like the heads of the characters that
Oh,
people
yeah.
used to meet in Disneyland and stuff?
Yeah, the cast members walking around dressed as
Yeah.
things from our nightmares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not great. Don't Google them.
It's proper scary as well. I can't imagine. I mean, were kids just more, I don't know, more prepared for those sorts of nightmarish visions when in the 90s? Because I think it would have traumatized me to see that
Yes.
sort of face coming at me. I mean, obviously, the people listening to this can't see your jumper, so they've got no idea what's going on.
No.
Somebody did say to me the other day, actually, is this going to become a video podcast at some point?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely. And that's because then you'd have to...
Oh, I don't want to do my hair and my makeup. I just, leave me here with my hairbands and my baggy jumpers without being seen by other human beings.
Exactly.
Thank
I
you.
don't want to have to do my makeup either, let's face it. To be fair, even if we were going to, it would have to be after we have had contact with a hairdresser, because I've got that rather sad...
He's got a mullet now.
I've got the
basically.
middle-aged man flick at the back of my hair that suggests it's time for a visit to the hairdresser.
I mean, we have gone massively off tangent.
Already?
Straight off the gate.
Already?
Straight off the gate.
We haven't even said what this episode's about yet.
That's
Right.
on you, that is.
That's on me, right? Okay, so this episode is, or we're calling it "Wisdom from Our Parents." I think we're calling it that, aren't we?
Yeah,
Yeah,
secondary
loosely.
heading, good and bad.
Yeah, some dodgy wisdom as well as some very
Yes.
valuable wisdom. But we had a talk the other day, didn't we? And we always say, we do find ourselves chatting about things that our parents taught us when we were young, don't we?
Yes.
We do that a lot.
Yeah.
So, and where it was kind of relevant to the topic that we cover here, we thought we'd do an episode on it.
Something a little bit different than just talking completely about one single mental health topic, but instead something that, shapes us as we grow without even realising it, and something that can, feed into our mental health from an early age, obviously what we get told from our parents.
Yeah, this is why I wanted to cover this, because as we're talking about these things, I'm very aware that I talk about this to my clients all the time in terms of this is where we get our hang-ups, insecurities. We form our map of reality based on what our parents demonstrate to us as we're growing up. It's almost like it's mostly non-verbal, a lot of it, in terms of the attitude that we adopt. So it's completely relevant to this topic, in as much as if you're listening to this podcast and you might, I don't know, be aware of certain emotional things that make you struggle, it's very probably come from parent times, as in when you were very young, and they probably had similar thoughts going on, or certainly demonstrated something that caused this sort of idea to get lodged in there. That makes sense. So that's why we're doing this. So we've actually made some notes on this one.
Do you know what? You normally always make the notes for the podcast, and I just turn up and make jokes off of what you say and give my own experiences. I've actually... Listeners, I don't know if you can hear that. I have a notebook in front of me. I've actually written some notes.
This is the thing. I think it's...
I didn't want to miss anything. I didn't want to miss any of the random things that were said.
Yeah, well, I've racked my brains as well. And actually, I did enlist the help of my sister, Mandy, who has a much better memory than me.
Who won't be listening to this, so we can say what we want.
But she just sent me over some things she remembers. That also, not just my mum and dad, I'm going to be tapping into the wisdom of my nan and granddad as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you are as well, aren't you?
Yes, my mum and my nan were the two women that raised me. It's no surprise, really, that I was raised by strong women, I think.
I think, yes, there you are, a very obvious product.
Yes, yes. My granddad was there, but, he was there, bless him. He was just there. So it was my mum and my nan that were responsible for for who I am today.
Amazing. Well,
So,
good job, Mum and Nan.
you know.
Should be very proud. But so this is the so I want to just contextualize this a little bit first, because when we're talking about how our parents' ideas shape us, I'm also, we also want to talk about how it's not necessarily deliberate, because I know if you're a parent, you probably think, well, I would like my children to be raised with these values, and we probably try and instill those values in them. But there's also things that we're not necessarily in control of our kids picking up. I've got a couple of stories that kind of that I use to illustrate this. Yeah. So when I was younger, I was fortunate enough. I lived with mum and dad. They're still together now, and that was my upbringing. I was kind of had a single older sister, so it was very much the sort of married with two kids sort of thing going on.
She's only how many years? There's only 2 years between you and Mandy, isn't there?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
you're quite similar in age.
Yeah. We kind of. I feel like we had a very standard. Like if you were writing a sitcom, it would be like a very based sort of
2.4
stable
children.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, the stable family environment. But I remember going over to my friend's house to have a play date, tea with my friend after school, and his parents were split up, and his mum he lived with his mum, and he would see his dad at weekends, things like that. And I remember saying to him, "Don't you find it weird that your dad doesn't live with you?" And he said to me, "I find it weird that your dad does," because he'd only ever known that sort of setup, because his parents split up before he could really remember.
Well, I had a similar thing. I knew, obviously, I was raised by my single mum, but I knew other kids had mums and dads and had that. But what I found weird was that none of you lived with your grandparents. So I lived with my grandparents, and we basically, I say we looked after them. I'm using air quotes here, because when I think back, and I think, oh, my nan and granddad were like, little old nan and granddad in their little old nan and granddad. They were like in their 60s. Like,
no, that's thinking about it now.
But but they were, because they say, don't they, that the generations are getting younger and younger, because, your parents are in their mid to late 70s. And when I met your dad, he was on a roof, and it's very much sort of,
I should stress
he wasn't about to jump off.
Yeah, he was doing some work on the roof rather than having an existential crisis.
Yes. Yeah, but do you know what I mean? Like your parents do so much more than my grandparents did when they were younger than your parents in the 90s.
Yeah, my dad is like in the second half of his 70s. If we've got something to do around the house, I'm still thinking, I might get dad to do that.
Yeah,
because he is generally quite a sprightly old chap, isn't
and cheaper than getting someone in.
Absolutely, marginally.
But yeah, so I always found it weird that when people are over the summer we're going to go stay with our grandparents for the week or something, and I'd be like, what?
Yeah, that was what we did.
I'd find it odd.
School holidays, we had a week with nan and granddad.
Yeah, no, can't relate.
But I had a brilliant one the other day in terms of we're a blank page when we're born, and we have our map of reality drawn onto that blank page based on our living situation. And one of the ladies on my training last weekend, when I told the story about my friend and his divorced parents, she had a brilliant story. Her parents share the same birthday.
What, like the same day of the year?
The same day of the year, yeah. And she grew up thinking married people had the same birthday.
So when you got married and you changed your surname, you had to change your birthday as well?
Yeah, as if like you had to agree on, okay, what's going to be our official birthday?
Well, then? I tell you what, ours would not be your birthday.
What, December the 15th?
Absolutely not.
It's too close to Christmas.
Absolutely not. We'd take mine, surely.
That's another example, though. So Christmas time in our house, my birthday's the 15th, my dad's is the 17th, my sister's is the 22nd.
It's quite literally an abomination. That's awful. It's awful.
It's a busy time for my mum, let's face it.
And then your poor mum, whose birthday is in June with me, it's just, celebrate on my own then.
Well, this is the thing. I've always seen Christmas as this big sort of cacophony of celebrations that all happen around the same time. And also birthday and Christmas presents would very often get sort of merged into one.
If my mum gave me a joint birthday and Christmas present, I'd call childlike.
But your birthday's in smack bang in the middle of the year.
My half birthday is Christmas Day.
Your half birthday, that's what it's known as, isn't it, in this house? Is it nearly
my half
Brit's half birthday?
Yeah, my half birthday is Christmas Day. Exactly every 6 months you have to buy me presents.
I know. Well, don't worry, I have a whole page on my phone that is prepping for the 6 monthly gift fest that is
Britfest. Yeah. I do find it funny, the things that we grow up with that we think are normal.
Yeah.
There's, as I say, growing up with this mum, so my dad wasn't around like at all. So it wasn't even as if like I saw him at weekends or I saw him sort of every so often. He gone, disappeared, not here. But I know people who had divorced parents who, you know, every other weekend would go sit in a sad cafe with their dad every now and then. You know, it would kind of be that go get a fry up. You know, it was very much
like the scene from the Santa Claus.
Yes, but instead of a Denny's, it's a Wimpy's.
Yeah. Wimpy's, they're still around, aren't they? I'm not sure.
I think they've had a resurgence.
Yeah, because I remember, Wimpy used to be Wimpy. Sorry, we're going off track here. I nearly went into the Wimpy versus McDonald's competition of when I was
always
younger.
McDonald's, not a competition. Anyway, we should actually get onto the.
Shall we start the podcast?
I think we
shall we? Yeah, we're 10 minutes in. We've done this chat rubbish. Okay, so we're going to do a deep dive into this. We're going to start with. So, do we want to like take turns in terms of little stories of things that our parents taught us?
Yeah, you go with the first few, and then I'll jump in.
All right. So my one.
We have notes. We haven't planned it out that far though.
Yeah, we're roughly speaking.
Yeah.
So my first one. Something my mum taught me, and I've got this in the forefront of my mind because I do a lot of work with people to help them with their sleep. And one of the best stories that I was told that helped me with my sleep, because I used to struggle with sleep when I was younger, and my mum gave me the best advice anyone can ever give anyone about getting to sleep. She said, go back to bed, think about something nice, you'll be asleep before you know it. Now that might seem like oversimplified advice, but now I understand how sleep works. So when it gets dark, we produce melatonin, which puts us to sleep.
Yes.
The only thing that counteracts melatonin is cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So a lot of the time we're awake, well, all the time, if we're awake when we should be asleep, it's because we're doing something that in some way stresses our system. So worrying about stuff or being angry that we're not asleep, that's a common one.
That's my one.
That's your one, isn't it? Yeah. Or
why
angry,
I sleep?
or angry that the person next to us is snoring. That
also my one.
Also a common one, yeah. I feel we're getting into our relationship a bit too much here. But
also, I find it interesting that your mum gave the sleep advice when your mum does stay up worrying.
Well, this is a classic example of my mum.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Exactly. Not wanting me to go down those roads. Because now I find out mum is a classic lays awake at night worrying person.
Yes.
But what she was really saying, which she didn't realise, was if you engage in some thoughts that will not create any cortisol, so they're just... this is probably not what she literally
You're
meant.
paraphrasing that.
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing that. Then the melatonin in your system will do its job. And I've always operated on that principle ever since.
Yeah.
And it's only later on that I find out, well, what I was really doing was deliberately guiding my mind to stop producing a stress response.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's just, I always think about that. And so I have things that I will think about now that I know in no way will stress me. And there'll be pleasant thoughts. So some people might choose to go to a happy place in their mind or something like that. Or some people, sometimes even just planning for something fun that you're going to do can be good, as long as you're not that organising person who's now going to worry about how you're going to manifest that. You know what I mean?
Hi there.
Well, I said to you before, think about going to Disneyland, but then you're more concerned with...
Then the spreadsheets come out.
Yeah.
Then we need to know where we're eating. We need to know our fast passes. Like, you can't just drop in.
It becomes a whole organisational nightmare in the middle of the night.
Exactly.
Yeah. But so that's my mum's top tip for me was how to get to sleep.
That's a nice one.
Yeah.
That's nice. I can give you one of mine. Would you like something useful or something useless?
Well, that's a I feel like one will suggest itself to you now.
Okay, let's go with something useless. This is no offence to my dearly departed grandmother, who I have mentioned her in the podcast before, but my nan, who passed away many years ago now, she was a little force of nature. She was a small Italian lady who spoke with a very, very thick Naples accent, could barely understand a word she was saying. And it's really funny because it's only in recent years when I've seen clips of Gino D'Acampo, I'm like, oh, that's what my nan sounds like. And then I looked it up, and Gino D'Acampo is from the same place as my nan.
Amazing.
So it's the exact. So basically, if you've heard Gino D'Acampo speak, you've heard my nan speak. Oh. So I listen to Gino D'Acampo sometimes just when I miss my nan. And
that's maybe if anyone knows Gino D'Acampo is listening to the podcast, you could get him to dress up as an old lady and just record a message for you.
With that be really creepy and horrible and send me down a dark path. Let's not do that.
Yeah, maybe that was a bad idea.
So my nan was full of useless information. And I say this lovingly. But for example, I just have a couple listed down here that I'm going to give you two of, and then we can come back to this. But one of the things was, and I'm sure she wasn't alone. I've heard other people say that their nans had given them this advice, but this wasn't so much advice. This was something she said so regularly, I was scared it would actually happen.
Right.
Always, Tim, always wear clean pants in case you get hit by a bus.
Oh, that's an old one. I feel like, I feel we all had that relative that had that advice.
Did we all have that relative that said it so frequently that I was terrified of walking down the street next to a bus?
Amazing.
I thought today is my day. This is it.
So it was more like a prophecy than sort of be careful.
Yeah, I mean, touch wood, I haven't been hit by a bus, so hopefully, but I will be wearing clean pants if it happens.
Nice.
So, and then the second one, which I think is slightly more specific to my grandmother, never have less... Never have less than 1 kilogram of pasta in the cupboard.
Straight from Italy with some pasta advice.
If she went down for less than 1 kilo of pasta, oh my Christ, it was panic stations. It was quick. Get Grandad to go to Sainsbury's.
Oh my God.
It was honestly, I mean, pasta for some people may have been, something they had every now and then, maybe an awful English rendition of spag bowl.
Weekly spag bowl, yeah.
Weekly spag bowl. Not in my house. So Nan did all of the cooking, and she was very, very Italian. And I say that there is as if there's levels of Italian. There is. She was A-star Italian. Yeah. We had some type of Italian pasta, pizza, bread, anything every single day. Every single day. And it was only when I hit the age of maybe 11 that I went round a friend's house for dinner that I first discovered a fish finger. I'd never seen it before in my life because, as I say, Nan did all the cooking. Grandad had a very thick Irish accent, very sort of Cork, and I could never understand.
How on earth did those two converse then?
My nan used to throw a shoe at him every so often. That was the thing, is they loved each other. They really, really loved each other, and that's another thing that I hadn't even written down actually, because I hadn't even realised. But you've just made me think of that when you said non-verbal cues as well.
Yeah.
Was seeing just how much my nan and granddad loved each other.
Oh, that's lovely.
And how much my granddad respected, in brackets, feared my nan. No, he really did. He respected her, and he spoke well to her. It was very. So I grew up thinking, that relationships like that were what I should be striving for. And I guess I realised it. I made in my head that the reason my mum isn't with my dad is because it wasn't like this. So I didn't see it as, I come from a broken home, therefore relationships will be weird. I saw it as, I didn't even contemplate that. I didn't even contemplate my mum's, relationship with my dad. I just saw my nan and granddad's relationship.
That's amazing.
And I thought, I want one like that.
Yeah.
And I have one. I just don't throw a shoe at you.
I was going to say that might be, would it be a deal breaker? Depends on the shoe, I suppose.
But yeah, never have less than 1 kilogram of dry pasta in, which is funny because my nan made fresh pasta a lot as well.
Oh.
This was like a backup pasta.
Would it be fair to say, pasta every day, were they quite, I don't know, maybe large portions of pasta that were served up?
Are you saying this because I was a fat kid and now a chubby adult?
I'm kind of saying this because the pasta that you serve to us, it's quite an epic amount of pasta.
Listen here, Box. I serve Italian portions, all right? Thank you very much. And feed everybody, feed people while we're on the subject of pasta.
Yes.
Feed everyone. Like, I'll get off pasta in a minute, but I never will. But I'll get off pasta for this particular podcast in a minute. But my mum told me this. She was young and she was walking through a park on the way home from school, and my mum walked past a homeless guy. And the homeless guy asked my mum if she had any spare change, which she didn't because she was a kid, and it was like, what was it, 60s? I don't know. And my mum said, I've not got anything, but if you come with me, my mum will feed you. And so my mum walks this homeless guy back to, funnily enough, the house I then grew up in after we'd moved back from Canada. Walks this homeless guy there, and my nan was like, what are you doing? And my mum was like, he said he was hungry. So my nan fed him, had pasta left over, obviously. Fed him pasta and then gave him some. I don't know in what. They didn't have Tupperware. I'm not sure, but the story, like my mum told me, gave him some and then sent him on his way with some biscotti. I think some Italian sort of biscuits and everything. And then She did that, still that, and he left, and that was lovely. And then my nan apparently had a massive go at my mum for talking to strangers and bringing a stranger home.
Amazing.
But she made sure he was fed.
Do you think this is why you will very often, if you see someone who's homeless, like outside a supermarket, you'll very often go and buy them a sandwich and bring it out to them?
Well, thank you for telling people how good a human being I am. But it's really funny. Well, I'll say this last one and then we can get on to you, because I've accidentally sort of steamrolled through most of mine.
Okay.
But I've got one written down here, which is hilarious that you should say that. This was my mum, and my mum's advice was, if you see a reduced sandwich in a supermarket, you buy the reduced sandwich, because you can put it in the fridge and it will last a couple of days. But if you don't want it today or tomorrow, go outside and give it to a homeless person.
Oh, wow.
That was something my mum instilled in me. It was mostly about the reduced sandwich. I think it was about getting the bargain, the bargain sandwich. But but she always said, but if you don't want it, give it to someone who needs it.
Oh, I love that.
Because I was never rich. We never had an abundance of money. But I knew growing up that there were people who had less than us.
Yes.
So if I can afford to help them, why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
You know, so that's what that was me. So
amazing.
A lot of these things are about food.
Well, actually, I've got one about food that you've just sort of prompted that, because I was going to come on to that later. But I did, as I say, I asked Mandy, my sister, to send me over some. One of the ones she sent over was that Mum would always buy like the reduced yogurts on the. So yours was sandwiches, ours was yogurts. We always had these weird, bizarre flavoured set yogurts,
like Yo Magic yogurt.
It was just, you know, those ones that were not quite yogurts, but not, I don't know, they were weird, and they were always, I think, lemony or something like that. And where they were kind of on the turn, that's why they always had a slightly fizzy flavour to them. Nice. So I feel like I may have consumed more slightly on the turn yogurts as a child than I should have. But anyway, okay, so let's do another one of mine then. Yeah. So okay, my dad. I could do a lot in terms of my dad's wisdom, because he did teach us, you know, umpteen things, because he was a very practical guy. And I, you know, another thing that Mandy came back with was that he taught us to use tools and to actually fix things and stuff like that. I think she picked up more of that than I did, if I'm honest. I still
Mandy, your sister, who put up like 2 sheds just for fun the other day.
That's the thing.
And I have to, you know, literally annoy you for 2 months to put a shelf up.
And Tim, who can't quite get the shelf straight. Exactly. Yeah, this is the comparison. But the thing that he taught me, and this has been so valuable to me in my life, he had so he got into sales in the sort of 80s time. He was originally a plumber, and he was on the tools, and then at some point a plumbing firm offered jobs to qualified plumbers to sell their pipework around companies and things like that. So to be, you know, the 80s was a big time for repping, wasn't it? For sales reps.
Yeah, we watched that one about the conservatories.
Exactly, yeah. So you would have fleets of people driving, I don't know if you still have, but driving around to different companies, you know, and that kind of thing. And so he got into sales via that path. And so he did a lot of sort of sales training in the day. Yeah. And this was just around the time that NLP, so for those who don't know, neuro-linguistic programming, had just been kind of created in America. And there was a lot of people learning mindset and language patterns to help with their sales. And there was a lot of kind of positive attitude stuff going on. And my dad had a lot of this training. And so what he was learning, he would, you know, pass on to me in terms of when he'd had a good course that he felt, oh, there's a bit of wisdom I can pass down. And I remember he had a poem on his office wall, which I must have read, I mean, thousands and thousands of times, because, you know, me being in his office chatting with him or just sitting there doing something. And I remember the last verse was, life's battles don't always go to the faster or stronger man, but sooner or later the one who wins is the one that believes he can. And I always remember that poem, and that was originally where I learnt categorically, without a shadow of a doubt, that if I believe I can do something, I can do it. And I think, and I owe him that, because I think that's why I do what I do now.
Well, you owe the printer of the poster that, at least.
To be fair. But
who put the poster up?
That's a good point. Yeah, who wrote that poem? I mean, I think it said on it anonymous. I don't think it was credited to somebody, but I'm sure you could find out who wrote that poem, and you could get a credit.
Plot
on that.
Twist. It was your dad.
Oh, don't. Shivers. Yeah.
And he's here today.
But so that was, and that was the thing I think that ultimately, along with certain other learnings, steered me down the path of, overcoming my anxieties later on. It was that sort of teaching where, and I said this in the last episode where we were talking about my anxiety, there was a bit of me that always believed I would overcome it. And I think that is one of the reasons why I had that belief, because I knew that it was within my control to my outlook, and how I approach things. So that was a big one for me, I think.
That's good. That's good. Well, let's just have another useless one from my nan. This was less advice, more something that she did that I now do, and I don't know why I do it.
Right.
So every New Year's Eve, my nan would open the front door and the back door to let the old year out and the new year in. And I would just like to point out, for those of you who maybe it slipped your mind, New Year's Eve is on the 31st of January, and it's bloody cold.
It's actually on the 31st of December.
What did I say?
January.
What happened earlier? We went into a coffee chain, didn't we? Also known as Starbucks. Other coffees are available.
Hashtag not an ad.
Not an ad. And the woman asked my name, and I froze, didn't I?
You weren't prepared for the question. You hadn't prepared an answer. I think this is the effects of extended lockdown.
This is the effects of not seeing another human being. We bumped into two of our friends when we were picking something up, and we chatted to them for about 4 or 5 minutes just standing outside. And I remember thinking, cool, I've not spoken to another human being who isn't you for a really long time.
Yeah, having an enjoyable conversation was a bit taxing, wasn't it?
I had to come home and have a nap. But yeah, so anyway, whenever New Year's Eve is, it's cold. Yeah. So I would always just remember we'd sing Auld Lang Syne and be freezing because she would have to.
Is this why it's cold New Year's night every year then?
Yeah, just to remind me.
Brilliant.
But it would have to be for like the entirety of us singing Auld Lang Syne. Honestly, I don't even know.
Amazing.
The woman was was
I think,
onto her own.
again, I think that I've heard of that tradition before.
Yeah.
Although I haven't met anyone who actually does it.
Honestly, my nan was incredibly superstitious. She didn't. She didn't walk. I was about to say she didn't walk under ladders. That's probably from a health and safety point of view. But no, she didn't. She kind of avoided lots of things like that. Oh, it was always saluting to magpies and whatever.
So you do that?
I do, because I believe in the bird hierarchy. I know that one of them is a general or something. And salute you, magpie. Hello, Mr. Magpie. How's your wife and kids? Which is very assuming, but
right.
Something like that. You're looking at me like I'm mad.
Am I? Apologies for that. It's involuntary.
If you see, this is true. This is the thing. If you see one magpie,
yes,
you have to salute him.
Yeah.
Okay. And say good morning, Mr. Magpie. How are your wife and children?
Is that part of it?
Someone back me up here. That is. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think actually, so superstition. Then you could argue then that any superstitions you have are because your nan was superstitious. Then, yeah. So what have I got? I've got one superstition that I have that isn't actually a result of what my parents told me, but you just literally made me think of it here. Did I mention this before in the podcast that when I was younger and I went and stayed in the school holidays with Nan and Grandad for a week, and I had a date block that I would turn the date over every day, and I turned it to the date that it would be when we returned.
Yes,
thinking ahead, what a clever kid I was. And then when I got back, our rabbit had died. Oh, Flopsy, R.I.P.
Of course, it was called Flopsy.
It was Mandy's rabbit, really. I just named it. No, I'm joking. That was. And I remember, so I don't do that now. No. I remember going to do the same thing when we went away for holiday the first time, and I was like, "No, Tim, don't do it." Because you know,
in case disaster would strike,
you know it won't, or certainly not because I turned the date block over to a different day. But there's a little bit of me like, no, let's not tempt fate. Why would we do that? You know. But okay, anyway. So next one from me though. Do you want a mum and dad thing, or do you want a grandparents thing?
Let's have a grandparents.
Let's have a grandparents thing, just to mix it up a bit. Okay. So my granddad, I love my granddad so much.
Was this granddad on your? Which side?
On my dad's side. Yeah. So I never knew granddad on mum's side.
Well, this is it as well. I only had nan and granddad.
Yeah, right. So you didn't have.
I didn't have two sets of grandparents. I literally had talk about the smallest of families. I had my mum, my nan, my granddad, and then my uncle for a very brief period before he also died. But that's another ridiculous story. So that's all I had. So for me, 3 members of family plus myself, that was my family. And then I'd meet people that I remember my first boyfriend, my second boyfriend? I don't know, I've had a lot of boyfriends. I think it might have been my second one. I don't know. He had a very big family. And I remember once going to his for Christmas, feeling massively overwhelmed because there was like 20 of them. I'm like, how are all these people related to you?
A huge Christmas.
No.
Yeah, not the way. Yeah. So, so I had Nan on both sides, but I didn't know my grand. Funny enough, because our name's Box.
Yes.
Nan Box. We just used to refer to her as Nan B.
Okay.
And everyone assumed there was a Nan A, but there was actually a Nan T who was Thompson. But yeah.
Right.
Anyway, so my granddad, he taught me. So when I asked Mandy about granddad, she said, I remember he always taught us to be happy no matter what, which I thought was great, that's not what I remember, though he was always a very positive, happy person. I remember he taught us it doesn't have to be perfect. Right. Now, it wasn't, I don't think it was deliberate, but I figured it out because whenever he was doing any mechanics on his bike or his car, he'd take bits apart and then he'd put it back together again. And he was notorious for this. He always had bits left over. Right. There was like screws and things. And it was like, shouldn't that go somewhere, Granddad? And he was like, it'd be all right. It seems to work okay. And that attitude of probably I don't have to sweat the tiny little detail and it will still work out okay.
Yeah, and then he gets it halfway down the road and it just falls apart.
Well, to be fair, we had a couple of times when his mechanic skills came into question.
Brilliant.
But it just, I don't know, that attitude, I remember, I do have that attitude now that I don't need to worry too much about the minutiae. And I think Granddad gave me that idea because he had that sort of outlook on things, you know.
That's really nice.
Yeah, and to be fair, and I should say as well, while mentioning Granddad, my Nan B, I should say, she was absolute strong woman. Like you were saying about your mum and your nan.
Yes.
She was the figure in my life. And everyone, funny enough, everyone in the neighbourhood, Dad told me this like years later, they would be terrified of my nan.
Really?
Yeah, because she was
I like that.
She was that person in the neighbourhood who was like, you didn't mess with her.
Oh, I like it very much.
Yeah, so I think that was, and again, I don't think she demonstrated, I don't know if she deliberately gave us that idea, but, and because, you know, by the time I knew my nan, she was an old lady really, but she was still the matriarch, you know, she was still very much running the show. And
maybe this is why you're not one of those guys who are intimidated by strong women.
Maybe, because a strong woman my first strong woman was my nan, and I loved her dearly. So, you know, why would you be afraid of somebody that cares about you so much? You know? Exactly.
Well, then, talking of caring for you so much, we'll go back. So I've pretty much only got one kind of main one left that I want to talk about, which is my mum. And I think I've probably brought this up. I've probably said these things, but my mum, and I don't mean this in the way that everybody says this, okay? But my mum told me I could do anything. And it wasn't just a throwaway, oh, you know, you can do, you put your mind to it, you can do anything. You know, it wasn't that. It was something else. And you're smiling at me because you know the level to which I'm talking about this.
Oh, yes, I've heard the stories, yes.
There was, my mum was so fierce. Honestly, if I am a 10th, oh God, I'm going to cry. If I'm a 10th of that woman, then I've done well in my life. But she honestly, she told me I could do anything, that there was no limits. And I'll talk about why I think this is maybe really, really good and also slightly detrimental in a minute. But she taught me that there was no limits to anything I wanted to do. And that was kind of proven by what I was doing. You know, by the time I was 10, you know, I had a scholarship to one of the top theatre schools in the country. I was in and out of recording studios and TV studios. You know, by the time I was 11, 12, I was performing on the West End. Like, and so to me, there was very much, and I know, don't get me wrong, as I say though, we weren't rich, we were not well off, we were not middle class by any stretch of the imagination, we were very much working class. But I know that because of where I was born, because of who I had as parents, I do know that even though I've been through so much adversity and I've been to hell and back, I do know that just certain aspects of my life give me privilege that maybe other people didn't have. But I had that sort of feeling of, well, yeah, if you want to do it, just do it. And that line, if you want to do it, just do it. Like, that has stayed with me. all of my life. You know, I have people say just even the little things, like the fact that I've got bright red hair. Okay, I have had hair, every single hair colour. I looked this week back at old pictures of me with black hair, blonde hair, blue hair, like all of it. I've had every single hair colour because I've just gone, I want it, so I'll do it. You know, and I have people say to me, you know, even in the supermarket and things like that, oh, I'd love to have bright hair, but I'm just not brave enough. And my brain cannot compute that. Cannot understand that. It doesn't go past the filter of, I want to do that, but I can't. I've never understood it. You know, for the same reason that, you know, I'm what society would sadly call a plus size woman. I just see it as that I'm a woman, but there you go. And I wear swimsuits and I wear shorts, and I have people say, oh, I'd love to, I'm not brave enough. I'm like, brave? What's brave got to do with any of it? So I think just you know, I wear this because I want to wear them.
I think this is it, and I recognised this very early on when I met you. Not just that you had, well, like you say, you wouldn't call it brave, you wouldn't call it courage, but you had the courage to be you, was what I would have called it. But also, you just, when you decided on something, you do it. There's no interim period. So me, I'm like, I've had an idea. I'll think about that for a little bit.
I'll have a cup of tea.
And I'll run it by some people. We'll have a discussion. Maybe I'll think about the potential pitfalls. Maybe then at some point, definitely in the next year or so, I might do it, you know. And you're like, oh, I've done it, by the way. You know, that sort of thing. I find out about it when it's done. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the things I really love about you, because you inspire me to just get on with stuff, you know.
I do find myself saying to you sometimes, stop thinking about it. Just do it.
I'm so good at planning.
But what I will say is, I'm not reckless, and I'm not, and I don't make stupid decisions. I mean, I have to make some stupid decisions, but I don't go out to make stupid decisions, and I'm not dangerous in the things I do. I'm not, you know, I'm not selfish in the things I do. When I say, oh, I just want to do that, I'll do it. I don't mean, you know, like stealing a kid's ice cream cone or something, even though that might be fun. No, I don't mean that sort of thing. I don't mean, oh, you know, I want to do that, but I shouldn't, so I will. It's not that. It's more that I don't see any reason why I wouldn't do a thing I wanted to do if it was available to me. You know, I take part.
That's the key thing, is that you take part. I think that's the thing that I love about you. You get involved, and and when you talk about your mum, I absolutely recognise that's where it came from, because she never gave you any idea there were any boundaries or limits. And it's like everything that other people could have, you can have that, in that sense. And I think that's
there was nothing. The only thing holding me back was me, but it wasn't even that. Like it was just, there's nothing holding you back, full stop. It was that. So I've mentioned this before, but obviously I used to be a singer when I was younger, and there are probably things that you could Google, but you'll never find them. But one of the things I did, I went on This Morning, which is a British TV show, in the mornings, actually, funny enough. And I went on it. God, this is how old I am. I went on it when it was hosted by Richard Madeley. Richard Madeley, and who was it?
Judy Finnegan.
Richard and Judy, that was it. So I went on it at that time, and we went on it for various reasons. But it was me and my mum talking about my singing and how my mum. How my mum was like my manager and stuff, and it's so cringe when I talk about it now. But the point of the story is, Richard Madeley said to my mum, you're very supportive of your daughter. You're very sort of, you know, he borderline called her pushy, I think. But he was like, you're very supportive. And she was like, yes, absolutely. She can do anything. And he said, and I will never, ever forget this line. He said, okay, but, you know, you're very proud that your daughter is a singer. But what if she wanted to be a tennis player? What if she wanted to be a violinist? Right? Without missing a beat, my mum said, well, then she'd play Wimbledon. She'd play the Sydney Opera House. There was no sort of midway point. It was, no, she can go all the way. She can, and I think, but now here's what I do want to say is while I think that's brilliant, into the sense where I will wear what I want, I will do what I want, I will be who I want, you know, and I'm not arrogant, but I do think I'm confident. And, you know, I do get people saying, well, how are you so confident? And I'm like, well, how are you not? Like I just my brain can't comprehend it. But I am also equally an introvert with social anxiety who doesn't like talking to people. So that, you know, there's swings and roundabouts. And it's great that I have that, and I'm very, very grateful to my mum for instilling that in me. However, sadly, as we know, my mum died when I was 16. I was still a kid. when my mum died. I was still a kid who, as much as I wanted to believe I was an adult, I was still a kid who was still trying to do the right thing by my mum.
Yeah.
Still trying to impress her, still trying to get her to tell me I'd done a good job, still trying to... I also hadn't seen that my mum was a flawed human being.
Right, yeah.
She was my mum. She was on a pedestal. She was... Yeah. And, you know, I know some teenagers have different relationships with their parents. My mum was like a goddess to me. She was just perfect.
Yeah.
And it's only since she's died and as I've got older and as I've sort of, you know, looked in... Because here's the problem. Because it was just me and my mum, there's no one I can ask. We had this conversation yesterday because I want to know more about my Canadian heritage. But there's no one I can talk to. There's no one I can speak to. So it's only been stuff I've learned about my mum. So she died at a real pivotal point in my upbringing where I couldn't see anything she'd said or done as wrong, if that makes sense. Yeah. So the problem is that her dying young, obviously, whilst it gave me a whole host of other things, you know, depression, separation, anxiety, all this sort of thing, it also gave me so much pressure to succeed. Yeah. Which is why now I don't do things for the sake of doing them. Yeah. You know, I started baking. Oh, look, I've, you know, somehow become, you know, I've created this baking website that people use my recipes all over the world and stuff like that. You know, I'll start a little thing and it will just snowball because I struggle to do things for the sake of doing them. And I think that comes from the pressure of my mum telling me that the sky's the limit.
I think, this is the thing. Most people, in terms of our happiness, we recognise that our long-term happiness comes from having a slightly greater purpose to what we're doing rather than just indulging in our stress-relieving activities. Our meaningful happiness comes from having a greater purpose. I think the downside of what your mum did for you with your confidence is that your mind, I've seen this, for you to engage in something, it has to have a great purpose. Yeah. Like it has to be potentially, now we're going to create something world beating and epic and something that'll change people's perception of this or that, you know. Yeah. And it can't just be, I want to do this for me. There has to be some kind of great purpose behind it.
But how do you, I mean, this is, you know, there are many, many reasons that I don't wish to become a mum and have children of my own. Mm-hmm. And just one of them is how do you give them enough confidence without making them feel like they're the chosen one?
Is that another Star Wars reference we've got there?
Oh, I was going Harry Potter.
Oh, okay, yeah, of course, yeah, but
you know, she thinks you're the chosen one. I am the chosen one. You know,
that sort of thing.
That sort of thing.
But what I was going to say, you know, your mum does take on this kind of Obi-Wan figure type for you that is kind of...
Is she more Qui-Gon? I think she's more Qui-Gon.
More Qui-Gon for the... but maybe, because...
I'm Anakin.
Are you? Yeah. At any moment could turn to the dark side.
I sense no conflict in you.
But this is the thing. I think you really hit the nail on the head there, and I think it's good that you recognise this because the number of times, and perhaps that's a nice time here to come on to the next thing that we want to talk about, really, which is our parents and not, I was going to say the damage they can do, but here's the thing, even the best parents in the world are inevitably going to pass on some of their stuff, their sort of limitations or their beliefs, and it happens...
Not on purpose.
No, exactly. It happens without us really, really realising. I always say this to people, that the best parents in the world are going to pass down some bad stuff. And also the worst parents in the world also do some good. Yeah. If you're still here talking to me and you're alive, you know, so they fulfilled that part of the task, you know. And I think, you know, so I'll see people come to see me and they'll have certain, I don't know, fears or phobias, you know, so they might be afraid of, I don't know, let's just say spiders or something like that, or they might deal with a high amount of anxiety on a daily basis. Yeah. And they'll come to me and they'll say, well, I've got kids now. I don't want to pass this down to them, because most of us these days recognize that we're learning machines, and especially at that early age. So they don't want to pass down their own insecurities to their kids.
Other reasons why people, like, you know, stop smoking when they have kids, not just because they don't want to smoke around the kids, but they don't want the kids to see them smoking.
Exactly. Yeah. It's that do as I say, not as I do thing. Yeah. And so it's funny how we spend our whole lives avoiding the things. So people say to me, you must deal with a lot of phobias as a hypnotherapist. And you know what? Less than you would think, because people put their energies into avoiding the things they're afraid of rather than putting their energy into sorting them out so they don't have to avoid them anymore.
Yeah.
The only time they come and see me is when they're concerned that other people, their offspring, are going to have to do the same thing and avoid this stuff for the rest of their life. So it's interesting how it happens. I had a very sort of interesting bit of learning that I got from a client that I saw when it was one of the few clients that actually came to see me saying, I want to work on my self-esteem.
Oh.
Normally people say, I want more confidence, or I want to have less anxiety. But she actually said, no, it's my self-esteem that's the issue. And when I sort of got chatting with her, turns out she's like got 2 degrees, and she was the regional manager of her company and looked like getting promoted to national manager. You know, she was a real high achiever, somebody that didn't struggle, so to speak. And it was purely as we were chatting that she said, oh, by the way, my mum's interested in coming to do your training. And I said, oh, does she want to be a hypnotherapist then? And she said, no, but she just likes doing trainings and learning. And I said, that's interesting. He said, yeah, well, what's happened was, she said, when she was a child, she failed one of her exams. I don't know if it was like the 11 plus or something that decided whether you went to grammar school or not.
Oh, I think it is the 11 plus.
Yeah. And
I don't know if they still do it.
I don't know. I think that's old money again. I think that is. But anyway, and she'd missed out on getting further education because she failed an exam, basically. Right. And so now she's always doing higher education. She can't stop learning because she loves it so
much.
Almost
like proving a point to her younger self.
Well, exactly, yeah. And she said, but what's happened here? She said, my mum, if I came back from school with like 96% in a test, her mum would straight away be like, okay, where did you lose that 4% then?
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't because she didn't think the daughter was being good enough. It was because she didn't want her daughter missing out on the opportunities that she missed out on.
Right.
So in her attempts to give her child everything that she'd missed out on, she had inadvertently installed the belief that she'll never be good enough because only perfection is acceptable.
Yeah.
And that's why she had low self-esteem.
Yeah.
Even though you could argue it was that attitude that drove her on to do some great things and become that high achiever, you could also argue the reason she wasn't happy is because nothing will ever be good enough. You know? And it's amazing how we get these beliefs installed inadvertently without our parents even trying to a lot of the time.
And you know, if the parents, because if my mum was alive today, obviously God knows how my life would have turned out, but if my mum was alive today and I had said to her, by the way, when you were taking me to auditions and when you were doing this and when you were doing that, that actually put a lot of pressure on me. Yeah. She'd be horrified. She'd be really upset because that's not what they want, not what they, you know.
See, I see a lot of people who, with regard to exams, they'll say, okay, my child is now suffering anxiety about the exams coming up. And I'm like, well, yeah, because it's important. It would be weird if they weren't anxious about them, wouldn't they? Yeah. Again, another great thing that my parents did for me, and they both were extremely congruent with this message. When it came to exam time, they said, look, tell you what, Tim, do your best. It doesn't matter how you do, just do your best and we can't ask for any more, can we?
No.
And they deliberately try to lift the pressure off me.
That's nice.
And I think in a lot of cases, it's those little things.
I think my mum didn't. My mum was had a very apathetic attitude to my exams because as far as she was concerned, singing was going to be my...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, who cares?
She was like, you can't learn singing in a science exam, can you?
But that's it. I think, honestly, exams, I think, were important for my mum and dad. They really wanted me to go to university. They wanted me to get an education and that sort of thing. But they did a really good job of making me believe that just doing my best was fine. I didn't need to do anything more.
That's lovely, that is.
But I'll tell you something as well that I want to mention here before we move on from wisdom from our parents. Both our parents installed this in us because I know we've said this before. My mum and dad never raised their voices to each other. They didn't argue like that. They bickered. They had disagreements. I mean, they seem to bicker a lot these days, I've got to be honest, but they don't raise their voices at each other. And we weren't brought up in a war zone, me and Mandy. And I know that, I see some other families that we know and we realise, well, there's a lot of shouting going on in the house and kids are growing up thinking that's the norm.
Yes.
It's like when people say marriage is it's hard work.
It's a slog.
And it's like, I mean, don't get me wrong, marriage is, you have to be mindful of each other's feelings, but I don't think it should be hard work. I think if we're always shouting at each other, that would be hard work, wouldn't it?
It'd be exhausting.
Yeah.
But no, I don't. My nan and granddad, because obviously all I had was my nan and granddad because my mum stayed single for the rest of the time. But but my nan and granddad didn't argue with each other. Like, again, they bickered. They kind of like, you know, but they'd been together for 147 years, so it had been a long time. But no, there was never any shouting. My mum never shouted at me. That doesn't mean to say my mum didn't, you know, tell me when I'd messed up, but she would do it quietly. Ooh. And it was scarier.
Slightly in a sinister fashion.
Yeah, it would be very much like, can you stop doing that, please? And it would be like.
So she kind of had like an Emperor Palpatine sort of approach.
A little bit. I tell you what it would be. She would also do that thing where she would just say, stop showing off. And I'd be like, oh, I'm not, I'm all right.
I used to hate it when my mum said that, stop showing off. It was like, I couldn't understand the criticism. It's like, so you're saying I'm misbehaving and that's somehow showing off, is it?
Well, just the attitude alone there.
Yeah, that was it.
But do you know what? The last thing I want to say before we sort of come to the end, but the last thing I want to say, my mum said to me, always hold your head up high. She had a massive thing about if you were walking down the street or if you were, you know, if you were going anywhere, you kept your head up. Yeah. You did not put your head down. You did not stare at the ground because you were higher than that, basically. And it was very much hold your head high. I can remember, you know, my mum had a bit of an altercation with a neighbour, shall we say. Yeah. And she just, the way she walked away from it was very much like, the words can't touch her. I learned that. And now, you know, I used to do it when I was a kid, and I do it now. If I'm walking down the street and, you know, there are a bunch of youths on the side of the pavement, or there's people, you know, or if I feel like I'm in a situation that I'm not completely comfortable in, anything like that, you will always see me hold my head up high when I am walking, because I don't look down at the floor and shuffle like that. Just, I don't know. And that's one that has stuck with me as well, to always maintain yourself with, you know, some level of dignity.
Yeah. Also, you know, adopting the posture of somebody that will not be a victim to the people around them.
Yeah. My mum used to say, if you were confident enough about something, no one would question you. And I wasn't going to tell this story, but I will. Just very, I know we're sort of, you know, coming to our usual time.
I want you to tell this story.
You don't know what story I'm going to tell.
I think I do. Go on.
At the TV studio.
Yes.
So as I say, we used to go up to TV studios a lot. But there was one week, I think we'd got the week wrong. I don't know. It was the wrong time. Anyway, we were up at the BBC TV studios, and I watched my mum do a straight up Jedi mind trick on somebody, because we were walking toward this. Now this goes to show how long ago this was, because this would not happen today in 2021.
Right.
But my mum walked up to the barrier, and she's got a phone to her ear. I was like, Mum, we don't have our passes. Like, it's the wrong day. She was like, walk behind me and shut up. I was like, okay. So we're walking toward this barrier, and my mum's just got her mobile phone out, and she's holding her phone up, and she's like, yeah. No, I'm on my way. I'm on my way there now. And as we got close to the thing, she looked at this kid who was manning this barrier, and she just kind of looked at him, looked at the barrier, and kind of did this hand wavy shuffle thing as if to say, open the gate. She was like, no, I'm there now. I'm just waiting for them to let me through. And she just stared at him, and he kind of like flustered and like just opened the gate.
Amazing.
And just opened the gate. And then that was it. And then we went and sat in the BBC canteen, and
wow.
It was just, yeah.
That's like proper Mission Impossible stuff.
Oh, it was amazing. My mum, as I say, my mum was terrifying and lovable in very equal measure. But yeah, it was just, it was amazing. So yeah, my mum very much said, if you do something with enough confidence, you won't get questioned. You know,
love it.
I think which is kind of like a fake it till you make it.
It kind of is, isn't it? An early version.
Early version.
The 90s.
I've enjoyed talking about these things.
Yeah, me too. I feel like as well, I don't even feel like we've done something justice. Like, we could talk a lot more about it, but I'm aware that we're starting to get to our time limit in terms of where we want to go with this podcast. We don't want it to be like, you know, we don't want the
hours and hours long.
Yeah, exactly. But so okay, let's have a final thought then.
Yes.
Okay. The reason we did this podcast as we started out was because we recognise that it's our parents that shape a lot of our attitude to life. Mm-hmm. Now, the stuff that I see every day is people trying to shake off certain aspects of that and not be restricted by the restrictions that our parents had. And I tend to think of it this way. Most people on the planet, if you said to them, do you agree with everything that your parents say? I think about 99.9% of people say, oh God, no. Yeah, because we've all had that experience of our parents saying something that we would regard as embarrassing or old-fashioned or probably inappropriate. Yeah, that sort of thing. All those hang-ups, those restrictions, those insecurities, maybe we can just put them in that category of things that we disagree with our parents on, and maybe let ourselves start again. Choose the things that they've told us that we like and that we want to hold on to, and then reject the things that we know they just don't need to apply to us. Yeah.
I think that's really nice.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for chatting with me.
Maybe we can send this episode to your mum and dad.
Maybe. No, they'll still say inappropriate stuff.
Yeah.
But here's an interesting thing, and this might be actually the best thing to end on. I was talking to my sister about this stuff. She said, you know what, in my mid-20s, I left mum and dad a note on their pillow. It was just a letter that she wrote to them saying thank you for the way they raised me.
Oh.
And I thought, I wish I'd have thought of that. Yeah.
I wish I could have done that.
Yeah, I know.
I never got to the point where I saw my mum as just a normal human being.
Yeah.
So that's why I think I still have that pressure to do good, to do well.
Maybe that's a little exercise you can do, whether they're around or not, you know.
But what I wanted to leave everyone with was that I really truly believe what my mum said when she said you can do anything.
Yeah.
You can, because there is nothing holding you back except you. I was talking on my Instagram stories recently about how I've gone back to university, and I had someone message me saying, I'd love to go back to university. I never got to finish my degree. I'd love to go finish my degree, but I think I'm too old now. And absolutely not. You know, there's people on my course who are in their 60s and 70s. You are never too old to start something new or dream a new dream. Yeah,
or create the big thing that you were here to create as well.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, while you're doing that, if you have time, give this podcast a little review.
Oh, that'd be lovely.
If you're listening somewhere where you can give a little review, that'd be lovely. We are on episode 6 now. We have so many more episodes coming, so many more things that we are looking forward to talking to you guys about. And I just wanted to say a very quick thank you to everyone who's listening to this podcast, who's sharing it with their friends, who's posting it on social media.
Yes.
It's so lovely. We really, really love to see it. And we're just so grateful that you guys are listening to it and that you are getting something positive from it.
Thank you so much. It means everything to us that people are actually listening to it, and also, you know, letting us know how much they're enjoying it as well.
Yes, and you can let us know on social media. On Instagram, you can find me at Britt Box, and you can find Tim
at Tim Box Mind Coach.
You paused there just to
check. Did you see the look of panic on my face? I've got to remember my Instagram channel again.
Yes, Tim Box Mind Coach is Tim, so you can tag us in things. Obviously, Tim has a YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, which is also Tim Box Mind Coach.
So come let us know you're listening. Come let us know what you think of it. We'd be really, really appreciative. So thank you again for listening. We really hope you've enjoyed this episode. I've really enjoyed talking about it. I was worried I'd get a bit emotional talking about my mum, because I mostly do.
You did very well.
Thanks. So remember, guys, you can do anything that you put your mind to. We always struggle with how we're going to end the podcast.
I've got mine sorted.
Go on.
I now, you may have noticed, I now say, keep thinking outside the box.
Bye, guys.
Bye.